What's happening, sales ascender? Sean here, back at you with another hot ticket tune-up. I hope you're ready because today I'm going to give you a framework that will show you how to increase high ticket sales by 30%. In fact, in my world, it increased my sales closes by 36% using this simple framework. Stay tuned. What's happening, sales center? Sean here, back at you with another high ticket tune-up. I hope the week is going well for you today. I know it's going great for us today. We are here in Georgia. Yes, this is a real background. We have a river property here. I'm really excited to be here, and it's just part of building an online business that I love so much is we can travel as we like and stay where we want to. So today I got some really juicy stuff for you. I had a question that actually came in from Yasmin. Yasmin asked this. She said, Sean, a lot of my clients get on calls with me and their body language is tense. As we start getting into it, nothing changes. Can you help? And I actually had the opportunity to watch one of Yasmin's sales calls. And what I realized is that there's some framework in the beginning of her call that she's actually missing out on. And so today, what I wanted to do is take a walk through the first part of the call, right? So everybody starts a sales call. It's kind of weird. You sometimes have to figure out where some common ground is. That's what they call, a lot of people say, I got to get in rapport and bond and connect. And yes, you have to do that. But a lot of people don't realize that the bonding and the connecting and the rapport building is actually done through nonverbal and tonality, the way you say what you say. Regardless of that, when we get past that part, the next thing where Yasmin was not quite filling the bucket of what she needed to do was adding what we call the rules of the game. Set the rules of the game for the call. So I'm actually going to walk through a couple of slides with you here in a second and show you exactly how to do this and just explain what this means. So increase high ticket sales by 30% using this framework. Here we go. I don't know if you knew this, but sports have rules, right? If you've played sports before, you understand that. And sales is a sport. Yes, sales is a sport. There is a scoreboard. How many sales have you closed? Usually predicted by how much revenue has entered the building and all the way on down to net profit after expenses. And that's what the rules of the sales game really are. And when I first learned this, I was in one of my sales coaching programs. I was learning as a student. This is about 18, 19 years ago. And I had this analogy. I played a lot of baseball growing up. And so baseball was familiar, near and dear to me. And when the beginning of the game, before a baseball game, if you've ever been to a stadium, what happens is the umpire will be at the home plate. The other umpires, from like the first and third base will come down. Sometimes you have a second base umpire. So there's 4 umpires. And then you have line umpires as well down on the foul poles for major sports, major league. And what happens at the beginning of the game is all the umpires come, usually it's the head umpire, and then they calls out the coaches of each team or the captains. And during this time, what they discuss at the home plate is the rules of the game, the rules of how the baseball game is going to be played. Look, if a foul ball goes this way, it's out of bounds. If a ball goes over the fence here, it's a home run. If it goes over there, it's a ground rule double, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then at the end, the umpire says, do we agree on the rules? And then both coaches or the captains will say, yes, great. So that's how you set the rules of the game in baseball. Let's move on, right? So let's talk about tennis, right? When tennis is played, there's always rules of tennis. And so before the game starts, the head judge and all the line judges, the ball boys, they get together, they bring the players out and they explain, here's what the rules are around the stadium, this is how it works. Everyone agrees and moves forward. Same thing in soccer, right? At the beginning, they do the coin toss. That means both captains come out to the main place. The referee stands in the middle of the field and says, hey, here's how the game is going to be played. I expect a good game. This is what the rules are. Do you guys both agree? Yes, let's move forward. Lastly, and formidably actually, I guess there's football, right? Of course, same thing with football. There's a coin toss in the middle, similar to there's always rules of a football game, right? And then lastly, not least by any means, is golf. Golf also has rules, right? And they actually have a big fat rule book that you have to know before you go start playing in a tournament. And using the foot wedge here is not really an option, but there is rules, and sales is a sport. Therefore, we should follow rules for sales calls. I wanted to make that. So why do we actually need rules? Let's rip through some pros and cons. First of all, the rules of the game gives us frameworks to stay on track with. Very simple. If we have a specific agenda that we're going to go through and we give clarity to a prospect when we're first talking to them, they're going to be like, oh my God, this is awesome. I have clarity. In fact, as we were driving through Georgia this morning, there's some cloud cover and we were going to this orchard to pick up some apple juice, which is amazing from an orchard. And it kind of reminded me of setting the rules of a sales call, because when the fog is down on the roads, it's really hard to see where you're driving. when that fog is lifted, because I have clarity of the rules of what I'm actually going to get into with the conversation, I know where the road ends. I know where the stop signs are. I know how I can turn left and right. And so having a framework is super important. Next of all, it gives you clarity and your prospect. Again, dual clarity makes for a much better conversation. It will also help to start lower the tensity that Yasmin was mentioning. It helps you to set up to close the deal easily, right? Next one is it's a low to no pressure sales call. That's where all that body language nonverbal will pop down. It eliminates forgetting things. Hey, this is what I need to cover today to make this effective for me. What do you need to cover today to make it effective for you? And now we have it on the table. We can write it down on a piece of paper, and we don't have to forget what we needed to get out of the call. And it allows you to enjoy the first 5 minutes of the sales call, and you take and keep control. Creates the flow of the meeting. Gosh, there's a lot of pros here. It's easy to agree on the next steps, and it gives you what we call built-in yes momentum. If you say, hey, this is what I want to cover today. You said you wanted to cover this. Does that sound good? Yes. Oh man, I got the prospect to start saying yes. We're in a good spot. Let's talk about the cons of not having the rules of a sales call. Well, you're not going to have any structure. This is where that cloudy fog is going to creep down in front of you, and your prospect's going to be like, I don't know where this call is going. It's weird for me. I don't know what to do. Like, right? So there's no structure. There's no clarity, like I just mentioned. There's a lack of suggested outcomes, right? I'm going to give you a framework here in a second, Yasmin, that you can use right away. Next, there's too much pressure in the call. This is why the body language feels tense. As I was watching our call, this is what I saw. Like, there was tense because there wasn't clarity at the beginning of the call of what they wanted to accomplish. And moving on, you forget important things and items to discuss because you don't have it on the agenda. And most people will struggle with the first 5 minutes of most sales calls simply because they don't know what they don't know. They don't know what to do. So I'm going to give you the formula here in a second. And when you do it without framework, when you start sales calls, it lets the prospect take control versus you. Never a good thing. And you don't have any rights in the process, right? As a sales professional, you have no rights because you never set what the rules were at the beginning. So you can't adhere to those, and it becomes very difficult to agree on next steps. Typically, when you don't set the rules of the game in a sales conversation, the call cycle extends out. Nobody likes to have a really long sales cycle, especially when you can have it very short and succinct if you do it right. And last and not least, you get the lack of the yes momentum. This is where you don't set up the rules of the agenda. They don't know what they're saying, and they don't even say yes to you in the beginning of the call. This is why we need the rules of the game. Okay, so let's move on. What are the 5 elements of the rules of the game? The first one is we need to have a purpose of the meeting. Explain why you're having the meeting, and it should move the selling process forward, which is easy. Secondly, you got to have the prospect's agenda. Third, you got to have your agenda. Fourth, you got to have the time requirement. A lot of people forget to ask about time in the rules of the game. And the last one is, of course, is the outcome. What is the expected outcome for the call? So this is the theory. Take a picture of this for a second. So this is the theory of what the elements of the rules of the game should have involved. And here's the secret formula framework that I was sharing with you, the game analogy, right? So here's how it works. First one is G stands for grateful. So it's an analogy, just game. Just remember game. I got to set the rules of the game, or rules of the game. First one is grateful. Be grateful you're talking. Be grateful you have the opportunity. Hey, Yasmin, I'm so grateful to have the chance to speak with you today. That's all you have to say. Boom. Secondly, ask them about their business. Hey, look, Yasmin, today during the call, a couple things I wanted to cover. Number one, I wanted to ask you about this, and this. Okay? Perfect. Next, I know you're going to have some questions for me. Maybe it's about my company. Maybe it's about what we do, this, that, or the next thing. But I'm sure you have some questions for me. And then check it out. At the end, we can decide one of two things. Either we can lock arms and move together in a great direction and provide a solution, a problem that you may have or may not. I don't know yet. That's what we're going to discover today. Or secondly, we're not a fit. And that's totally cool as well. You have that. I mean, a lot of the time people aren't a good fit for me. And lastly, again, the time element is the other piece is, hey, you still have about 45 minutes for the call. So typically what I'll do is I'll get 2 yes momentums in my flow. So I'll run through this. I'll be like, hey, Yasmin, so grateful for you for being here with you today. Thanks for the time. I got to ask you a few questions about this, and this. I'm sure you have questions for me. At the end, one of 2 things is going to happen. Either it's going to go this direction or this direction. Does that sound like Yasmin's going to, yeah, that sounds perfect. Perfect. You got the first yes, you got that yes momentum. And you say, by the way, did you still have about X amount of time for the call? Yes, I do. Okay. So now we've gotten 2 yeses inherently on setting the rules and getting them to say, the time is good. And so that, my friends, is the secret to closing more deals than you know what to do with. When I entered this into my selling career, what I found was I was able to shorten the length of my sales calls, give more clarity to my prospects, so there's no fog around the streets that I'm driving down, and deals started to close. And over a period of time, about 6 months, I noticed that 36% more deals were going over the line in my favor. I was like, whoa, this is insane. So if you're not setting the rules of the game for every single sales call that you get on, please, please, please take the first couple of minutes of the call. Say, hey, it's great to see you. Again, I'm grateful. And then dive right into that game analogy. As I mentioned, I'm grateful. I need to ask you this. I'm sure you have a question for me. At the end, this is what we're going to cover. Does that sound okay? Yes. Do you still have about this much time for the call? Yes. Yes, momentum, very much clarity in the call. And that, my friends, is how you will close more deals. With that said, I know you've just been tuned up. There's a sales ascender inside of each and every one of you. Make sure and smash that like button, feed the algorithm gods. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and please share this with somebody who could use this knowledge. And with that said, I can't wait to see you next time.